There are many ways, there are many instances that one has to understand in terms of identifying these people. That yes, I don't have a job, I don't have a formal job, I'm not able to earn money, so I'm just being held back in terms of job. Disguised unemployment in the context of work, in the context of employment, you are still unemployed. The seasonal unemployment is more than the permanent unemployment. Good morning and welcome to the session 5 of chapter 7, unemployment on these factors. That is what we are going to talk about. We are going to talk here on a very clear factor in employment and growth about the unemployment and the importance of it when it comes to the national economy altogether. So moving forward, the one single topic that we are going to talk about, that we are going to take in, is on the unemployment factor. Why unemployment is becoming a serious problem when it comes to economics. In many cities, you might find people standing in some select areas looking for people to employ them so that for a day's work. Now, this is quite common in Indian cities where we still are talking about the daily wages, the casual laborers altogether. Some go to factories and offices and give their biodata and ask for a job, but they stay back home when there is no work. So I'm again talking about those seasonal workers. They are not able to get job. At times when they get job, they go to those factories and offices. When they don't get job, they have to come back. Some go to employment exchange and register themselves for vacancies, and through which they might get some job altogether. But how the NSSO defines, that is the National Sample Survey Organization, defines unemployment as a situation in which all of those owing to lack of work are not working, but either they are seeking work or they want to go to some employment exchange to find out some job. On the whole, what I would like to say here is that unemployment is one serious problem. Why? Because if more and more people are involved in this sector, automatically what happens here is that the employment exchange, we are not able to generate national income. The consumption level will start coming down. The GDP will get affected, and most of the people will not have an active lifestyle at all. So it is highly important at any given point of time, people need to get employed in some form or factor. So every time what the government tries to see is that create some employment opportunity and leave these people inside so that they will be able to see growth, they will be able to see the development happening. Now, moving forward, there are varieties of ways in which unemployed person is identified. Now, there are many ways, there are many instances that one has to understand in terms of identifying these people. Economists define unemployed person as one who is not able to get employment for even 1 hour or in a half a day. Now, what I literally want to put in the statistics value and say that economists believe that people who are not even able to produce or give some productive work, even for 1 hour in a day, are said to be unemployed people. That means to say here, there are many people who might not be actively working, but they might be contributing at least 1 or 2 hours or even 3 hours by doing some part-time or casual labor. Now, those people cannot be called as unemployed. Now, for example, if I work as a delivery boy in a part-time engagement, or if I work in a hotel, if I work in a fast food joint, I might be working only 2-3 hours or 4 hours a day. But again, I cannot be classified as completely unemployed. I am employed under a particular sector which might not be classified as a formal sector. So it becomes very important here for all of us to understand the word unemployment itself requires a very clear-cut definition altogether. Now, there are 3 major sources of data on unemployment. Report on the Census of India, the National Sample Survey Organization report of employment, unemployment situation and Directorate General of Employment, the training data from the registration with various exchanges. So we have quite an amount of data flow that we get into the system from different organizations and institutions who try giving us this data at different levels. But then what we are interested to see here is that this unemployment data needs to be eroded, needs to be taken off, needs to be understood very, very clearly. So moving forward, we are also going to talk about some factors here. Though they provide different estimates of unemployment, they do provide us with attributes of unemployed and the variety of unemployment prevailing in our country. What is good about this data is that we come to know the characteristics of these people who are still unemployed, the reason being why they are unemployed, what are the attributes, what are the factors that are governing here in terms of understanding the growth sector altogether. Because many a time we find that, or we feel that the country has got enough skill set, enough people, but then there is something that is lacking. Either the job is not perfect or the people are not able to match according to the requirements. So somewhere down the lane, we want to understand the data, analyze the data altogether. Do we have different types of data of unemployment in our economy? The answer is yes. Why? Because the situation described in the first paragraph of this section is just called as the open unemployment. That is the first part altogether. Economists call unemployment prevailing in Indian farms as disguised unemployment. So we are going to talk about two factors of unemployment. One where you openly discuss and decide that yes, I don't have a job, I don't have a formal job, I'm not able to earn money, so I'm just being held back in terms of job. So that is what we call it as the unemployment factor altogether. The second one, what we are trying to understand here is that the disguised unemployment that happens in farms and in other sectors altogether. Those are the sectors where you will be able to see that people are not able to go forward, people are not able to get back in terms of revenue, in terms of cost function altogether. So that's also quite a challenging factor altogether in terms of unemployment. Now, moving forward, now we also have got what is this disguised unemployment. Now, let's look into the example very clearly and we will try to understand. Suppose a farmer has 4 acres of land and he actually needs 2 workers and he himself to carry out the various operations in the farm in a year. But if he employs 5 workers and his family members such as his wife, his children, this situation is called as disguised unemployment. Now, what we are now trying to understand here is that in the name of work, you are just for namesake creating your database saying that I am also employed, but you are not actually getting active employment. When you look into the example itself, you will be able to understand this factor clearly. The farmer is not looking in for people in a direct manner. The farmer is able to continue and do the job by himself, or maximum he might try to take 1 or 2 people. But in the context, what happens here is that he names his wife, his children and everybody as a part of the working community. In reality, they are not working. They are only being shown as people working in the farms or in the field. So this is what we call it as disguised unemployment. In the context of work, in the context of employment, you are still unemployed. So this is a very big and a serious factor that prevails in our economy. One of the studies that was conducted in the late 1950s showed that about 1/3 of agricultural workers in India are in the same pattern. They follow the disguised unemployment altogether. The reason is very, very clear. Sometimes you might not have enough land. Sometimes you might not have enough productive work. Sometimes the farmer might feel that I will be able to do the job myself. So I'm not in a position to hire a labor and pay it. So this is one of the reasons why we do not go in for farmers, why we do not go for higher levels of employment altogether. So disguised unemployment still continues in India and it remains as a threatening situation to the Indian economy. Now, moving forward, scholars say that in India, people cannot remain completely unemployed for a very long time because their desperate economic condition would not allow them to be so. Now, this is one very, very important factor. There are many countries in the world where the government supports their citizens by providing them something called as a menial pay or some allowances or a per month, a per diem kind of thing. So what we call it as a fixed compensation allowance that has been given by the government itself in order to take care of the citizen. But in India, the government will not provide any kind of social security allowances. So which means to say that if you tend to remain in the unemployment sector for a longer time, that cannot persist. Why? Because the economic conditions will force the worker again to go back into employment. It will force him because he does not have money. He has to take care of his family, and there will be a situation where his needs and wants have to be satisfied. So, as the scholars and experts point out, one cannot remain in the state of unemployment for a longer time period. He has to find a job. He has to come back into the mainstream of activities, and at some point of time, he has to redefine himself as a worker. So that is why in India, we find that the seasonal unemployment is more than the permanent unemployment. Now, moving forward, you would see that rather than they are being forced to accept jobs that nobody else would do, unpleasant or even dangerous jobs in unclean and unhealthy surroundings. So now you see that the necessity forces that particular person or the worker to take up job which might not be really safe enough, but then the situation is forcing the worker to take up the job because now he has come to that desperate mode altogether. So that is why what happens here is that in India, we always try to cling to some or the other kind of employment factor so that we can survive for a longer time period. The government has taken many initiatives to generate the acceptance in terms of employment. And one of the sectors, as I've always told in economics, is the construction sector, because this sector employs about 33% of labor force in India. That's 1/3 of India's labor workforce. So every time when there is some construction happening in the urban cities or in the tier 2 cities, it is always a direct source of employment that one can think about in the situation. So this is highly recommended, and this is very much needed in terms of the construction work altogether. And also, if you start seeing in the employment sector, construction sector is one area which is able to provide skilled, unskilled, as well as white-collar jobs which are needed for the infrastructural development of our economy. Now, moving forward, with this, we come to the conclusion of the session. Thank you for being with me on the session. I hope and believe that the session had added some value to you. In the next session, we shall discuss about some of the concluding factors of employment and growth. Until then, goodbye and thank you.